Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Brady. I'm with Paul Barrett, who is the Deputy Director and Senior Research Scholar at the Center for Business and Human Rights at the NYU Stern School of Business. Hi, Paul. Good to see you.
Hi, Diane. Good to be here. Thank you.
So, we last spoke when you did that fantastic study about disinformation and how some of these platforms actually have exacerbated so-called fake news. Here we are right now. Donald Trump facing an indictment. Curious, how did we get here from where you sit?
Well, Donald Trump has been skirting the law for his entire adult life. So we got here by dint of his finally actually getting indicted, which many people think could have and should have happened a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the social media component of all of this, I think it's important to remember that Trump is by far the most skilled individual in these United States at exploiting social media platforms to amplify false information, which is in significant part, not total, but significant part, how he got elected in the first place, how he governed as president, how he tried to undermine the election that ousted him from the White House in 2020. And he has spent years now undermining public trust in elections to the point where most declared Republican voters tell pollsters that they think American elections are rigged. And now he's going to train the same type of social media disinformation barrage on our court system, because he's been criminally indicted in state court in New York. It is altogether possible that he'll also be indicted in state court in Georgia, where he is under investigation for trying to manipulate the presidential election in Georgia in 2020. And then, of course, there's the investigation by a federal special prosecutor in Washington who is looking into Trump's role in two things, which one is the planning for and execution of the mob attack on the Capitol, January 6th, 2021. And the other one is Trump's handling of classified documents that should have been turned over to the National Archive, but which he took with him to Mar-a-Lago when he left Washington.
No.
So Trump is facing a whole barrage of investigations and potential indictments, and his defense is not going to be on the facts of any of these cases. It's going to be on his claim that he is being politically persecuted.
Well, let's talk about the platforms a sec. First of all, he did have his accounts, basically shut down at one point. Has he been neutered somewhat by virtue of having to be on Truth Social versus Twitter, where he had a massive following? We know that he's got a much diminished reach, in his own platform, basically. Does that make a difference here?
I think it makes a difference in the sense that he is unable to instantaneously reach the same scale of followers. But I think you see a different picture if you look at it over time, because it right now, particularly this far out from an election, it doesn't matter whether he can directly speak to quite as many millions of people in an instant, because people hear about what Trump has to say through a variety of channels. If Fox News or One America News Network or Newsmax train a camera on one of his rallies and then cut that tape up into pieces and begin putting it on their own Twitter accounts or Facebook accounts or YouTube accounts or TikTok accounts, the images get around, the key words get around, and I don't think Trump is having any difficulty reaching his base. He's about to enter into, as I said, a crazy, mud wrestling match against rivals like Governor DeSantis in Florida, while at the same time trying to take down the American criminal justice system. And I think he will turn out to be, sadly, quite effective at the latter test.
Well, it's interesting. When you talk about his base, very little of that base is in New York, where he is facing at least his first indictment, the only indictment that we certainly know of at the moment. Is that going to, I mean, that would seem to give fodder to the argument it's hard to have a fair trial. I don't know, I would be using that in his shoes. I mean, how strong a base does he have here?
His lawyers will be making that pretrial motion without a doubt, and it'll be fascinating to see how that argument plays in court, because we've never had someone who just lost, who was president and then lost a presidential reelection campaign, where you can go out and count what percentage of the population voted for him. He got a pitifully small amount of support in Manhattan, where he is going to be tried, and his lawyers will no doubt say that we have to move this trial to some place where everyone does not already have an opinion about Donald Trump. I think the counter argument is, find the place where people don't already have an opinion about Donald Trump. So, moving it to Albany, New York, I think would not significantly change the key criterion, which is, will you be able to form a jury of people who have not already made up their mind about the defendant and the acts the defendant has been accused of? So I think that will be litigated, but I think the trial will end up in Manhattan eventually, and he'll be tried here, and we'll see what happens, because I don't think there's any room for compromise here. District Attorney Bragg is not going to offer a plea deal, and Trump's not going to take a plea deal. So we're going to have a trial.
What do you expect the tactics to be for Bragg? Because it's fascinating to look at how the January 6th hearings basically went. Those were staged in a way that was unlike anything I'd seen in Washington. Now we have, Alvin Bragg, as you mentioned, he knows the man that he is going after, he knows is an expert at social media platforms, etc. Is he also going to be doing that, or what is his strategy? Because I think you would need one in the court of public opinion too, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think you definitely do, and I think that Bragg will feel that pressure, as other opponents of Trump have felt the kind of extracurricular pressure that Trump is so expert at organizing and bringing to bear on his opponents. Bragg, I think a very unusual move, today answered some of his congressional critics, Republicans in Congress, who have joined Trump in accusing Bragg of leading a politically motivated campaign against Trump, and have demanded that he turn over documents pertaining to the investigation. A very unusual demand for Congress to seek to intervene in a pending criminal proceeding at the state level. But Bragg answered them publicly. Even as the indictment remains under seal, he was making a public statement telling Republicans in Congress to back off, and that he wasn't going to be intimidated by them. So if Bragg had picked up the phone and asked me for advice, I would, which he didn't do, by the way, I would have told him, don't dignify this with a response. Just let it go. These people, you'll never get the last word with these people. So if he chooses to fight in the court of public opinion in that fashion, I think that will only churn the waters more vigorously, and could just exacerbate the circus-like environment that inevitably is going to surround all of this. I mean, which we'll see first sometime early next week when Trump comes to New York to be arraigned.
Since I want to play on your legal background a bit here, Paul, because when he was a sitting president, things like, his behavior during, say, impeachment proceedings, that he simply would not show up. He would not, things that you thought you were forced to do legally, the president did not do. Can he do that as a former president in this situation? Can he simply just recuse himself and say, I don't believe in this institution, ergo, I'm not going to take part in this?
Yeah. Well, your description of his response to congressional oversight is very accurate. The difference is that the business of trying to subpoena a sitting president to get a sitting president to testify under oath or to appear before Congress against his will is actually a kind of a fraught undertaking, and one that raises all kinds of esoteric constitutional questions about the separation of powers. In contrast, with a straightforward criminal prosecution at the state level, and his now being an ex-president, not in office, not enjoying some of the official and unofficial privileges that are afforded a sitting president, there really isn't an avenue for him to play those kinds of games. If he were just to stay down in Florida and refuse to appear in New York,
in exile,
the New York authorities, could basically demand his extradition to New York, and you would end up with New York officials, going down to Florida and basically physically bringing him to New York, since I don't think he'd have any legitimate reason to resist extradition from one state to another. So he's in a very different environment now. It's not a normal environment, but it's a lot closer to a normal environment than being a president who doesn't care about appearing to just completely flout Congress's authority.
And at one other point, which is, I was imagining the optics of him being hauled to New York and that being a good thing for his, argument that he is making. You mentioned at the start of this conversation the risk of him legitimately undermining, the institution, essentially, of the judiciary. Like, what makes you think that that much is at risk in this situation, given that he's no longer in office? I know he's clearly, hoping to be in that role again. But are you as worried as you would have been, say, 2 years ago?
Well, yes. I mean, my view of this, hasn't changed particularly. This is his playbook. When confronted by opposition of any sort, he changes the topic from the substance of the confrontation to an ad hominem attack, which he has done with Alvin Bragg and with the other prosecutors who are investigating cases against him. And he changes the topic. He shifts attention from what's actually at issue to another supposed made-up controversy. And he has shown a talent for going after the very institutions that undergird the system that he is constantly, endlessly insisting is corrupt and designed to afflict him. This is a trope that actually is quite common with populist leaders who try to inspire their followers by alleging that shadowy establishment forces are against us. We, the people, the little guy, I'm with you. I represent you. Or as Trump said in a recent speech, I will be your retribution. This is Trump's vocabulary, and this is Trump's strategy. You're constantly getting back at the people who previously wronged you. You are attacking people who have made claims that you're misbehaving in some way by attacking their integrity, and you attack the underlying institutions which in periods of more normal politics are not really attacked by either side. People argue about issues. They may argue ad hominem to some degree, but they don't tend to insist that it is American democracy itself that is at fault and that is the cause of the troubles that afflict
No, it's
me.
fascinating.
You're a grieved leader. I alone can fix this, he said at the nominating convention in 2016. That's his
Strongman 101, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's say I'm Alvin Bragg and I do call you up. What advice do you have for him, given the person who we know is now going to be indicted, the case that he has? Some people felt that the case in Georgia might have been stronger. I'm not a legal pundit. I can't weigh in on that. But what can he do in light of what we know is going to be the strategy of the person he's indicting?
Well, God help him if he had to come to me for advice. But based on my observing and writing about many trials and other legal proceedings over many years, um, the very simple lesson that or generalization that I would draw from that experience is keep it simple. That I've seen over and over again over the years, seemingly legitimate prosecutions unravel when the jury is invited to examine many different counts in a single indictment. And it's almost an invitation to pull at lots of different threads in the sweater until you find one that unravels the sweater. Of course, the jury doesn't have to convict on all counts in order to convict on some counts and the person to be found guilty. However, my observation is over time that simple is almost always a better strategy. Give the jury a story that they can understand from relatively early in the trial and that they feel comfortable with, as opposed to complexity, where I think jurors end up picking at different parts of the case, focusing on different parts of the case, and potentially you end up with one or more jurors who it just says, I can't get to the beyond the reasonable doubt standard, so I vote to acquit, and then your case goes down the tube. So that would be my advice to him. I don't think he's taking that advice, because from the reporting we have so far that I've heard, the word is that there are 34 separate counts in this indictment, which sounds like a lot of counts to prove the idea that Trump violated New York State business law by fraudulently misdescribing his hush money payment to the porn star as an ordinary legal expense. That is the sum and substance of what this case is about. It's about the misclassification of hush money in the business records realm, and that in fact the expenditure of some $130,000 should have been classified as a political donation to his own campaign, because he was making the payment in order to keep his campaign from being hurt by the revelations having to do with the porn star. So as I would try to keep it as simple as possible, and we'll see whether Bragg goes that route.
Well, we'll keep watching, and thank you for joining us, Paul. I look forward to continuing the conversation.
You bet. Thanks, Diane.
Thanks.